With China-U.S. relations at a crossroads until the new U.S. administration settles in, opinion makers and leaders, past and present, came together virtually this week to address the challenges facing bilateral relations and explore a roadmap for future relations. The forum, entitled U.S.-China Relations, The Way Forward, spoke of the need to rebuild trust and called for dialogue, warning there would be no winners if economic decoupling continued. So will China and the U.S. find a way to cooperate again, and will they create new mechanisms for managing differences? What might the next 4 years look like? I'm now joined from New York via Skype by Blackburn-Dwyer, president of Grasshopper Strategies. Here in Beijing, I have Professor Gong of the University of International Business and Economics. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Great to have both of you on. You know, this is such a recurrent topic. We've talked about it many times, but every time we discuss it, the backdrop shifts a little bit. We're talking about it again this time today in the context of a forum in Hong Kong debating the future China-U.S. ties going forward from this point on with the new Biden administration in the White House. The forum was hosted by the China-U.S. Exchange Foundation, that's CUSEF, and the China Center for International Economic Exchanges, or CCIEE. John, let me start with you. In her opening speech to the forum, Chief Executive of Hong Kong SAR, Carrie Lam, spoke of the economic interdependence between the U.S. and Hong Kong, saying Hong Kong is an economic bridge to China. That being said, under the Trump administration, the SAR special trade status was revoked and a number of Hong Kong officials are under sanctions. What are your thoughts on this, John? Are these decisions likely to be rolled back under the new administration, making Hong Kong less a contention point between the two sides?
Well, let me first start off by praising Carrie Lam for hosting this event, herself being still sanctioned, and she's gracious enough to come out and say these words, and I think she deserves a lot of credit for her actions. Now, in terms of the future Biden administration's strategy with respect to Hong Kong, I think there's a hope that some of the things that the Trump administration has done can be potentially rolled back without incurring too much political capital in Washington, D.C. right now. Some of the things are quite nuanced, you know, I don't think there's really a national interest from the U.S. perspective to keep these sanctions in place, particularly targeting individuals. I think this, you know, opened up a very bad example, bad precedent that government officials would be personally responsible for carrying out the government strategies and policies. I think Carrie Lam is a prime example of that. It's very unfair to her, but I think she handled this very well. She rise up to the occasion, and this is a great example. When President Biden talked about, you know, leading the world by power of example, I think Carrie Lam is a great example here.
Brandon, how do you think Hong Kong fits into this overall picture of struggling China-U.S. ties? Friction grew after the passing of Hong Kong's national security law. What approach will the Biden administration take to the law? Will it add fuel to the situation?
Adding fuel to the situation would suggest that President Biden would add more sanctions or would go farther down the road of recriminations or hard statements. I don't see that happening. What I do see happening is President Biden continuing with the unfortunate situation in Hong Kong. The reaction to the national security law was bipartisan in the United States. Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, has been a longtime critic of China. She comes from a very anti-China section of San Francisco, and so she and many other Democrats across the government supported the U.S. reaction to the national security law, and it will accelerate what I think was already happening, which is that Hong Kong is no longer the entrance point to Asia. It is no longer the entrance point to China. China itself has developed Shanghai, Shenzhen.
Brandon, we're having some problems with your audio. We're going to put you on hold right now as we adjust that issue. John, let me come to you now. You know, so many opinion makers, so many people with experience dealing with China-U.S. ties are present at the forum. CCIE Chairman Zheng Peiyan said that in order to seek win-win cooperation, China and the U.S. must first rebuild mutual trust by restarting and improving multi-level engagement mechanisms and ultimately use that dialogue as the fundamental conduit to address issues and challenges. And that's no easy task, especially with bilateral ties so low right now between the two sides. But there has to be an area where ice could be broken, where that's easier to approach as we move to reset bilateral relations. What is that area?
Yeah, well, what you are referring to it actually existed during the Obama administration. This is the multi-level dialogues between the Chinese government and the American government in several areas. There's the the military security track. There's also the economic track and a couple of other tracks. And this was killed by the Trump administration. There was no such exchanges, no such dialogues during his administration. And I think what Mr. Zheng was referring to is to resume, at least to take back this mechanism so that both sides at various levels can communicate and address the respective issues each side has. I want to also make a point of I want to make a point about the reason why Caroline Lam and her colleagues are being sanctioned by the U.S. government. She is being sanctioned for precisely doing the things that are analogous to what's happening in Washington, D.C. to deal with this insurrection. What happened, the insurrection happened in Capitol Hill. The mobs of these rioters that rushing to storm the Legislative House in Hong Kong, in my view, is no difference from what the mobs did to the Capitol Hill. And her administration stood up to that challenge, restored order, and took Hong Kong's life back to normal, and now she's being sanctioned by the U.S. government. So this is, the ultimate example of hypocrisy, in my view, and also the example of ludicrousy characterizing the Trump administration. So I think, the sanctions against her is totally unfair, and I think that Biden administration will take actions to roll back these totally ridiculous sanctions against her and her colleagues.
Brandon is now back with us on the line here. Brandon, let's also talk about some of those stumbling blocks that are in the way, some of those obstacles that will remain there for China-U.S. to resolve. We talked about Hong Kong, a contention point, and Taiwan is another point. Last Saturday, the U.S. State Department released a statement reaffirming support for Taiwan. What will be the Biden administration's approach and stance on the issue of Taiwan, knowing that this is a very sensitive issue that could further sink the relations?
Well, the Biden administration is expected to be consistent with the Obama administration, which obviously President Biden was vice president under President Biden, and many of the senior level cabinet officials are continuations of the Obama administration. That policy towards Taiwan has been consistent for decades in the United States. The statement released by President Biden was in reaction to what has now become routine sorties of aircraft flying near and over Taiwan. And so for me, the Saturday events were basically the same as always. There was no change here. Mainland China is doing what it has been doing for quite a while, and the United States answered with the same answer they've been giving for decades.
And John, let's squeeze in another topic here about tech, about trade. President Biden has already said he won't be lifting tariffs immediately. But does this mean he'll follow the same approach, especially on the trade issues, as former President Trump?
Well, first of all, I don't think that he's going to follow Trump's strategy of engaging in a trade war with China. I think he publicly said that he's against the trade war. Now, in terms of rolling back these tariffs, I think I can understand that it takes some political capital to do that, and he probably doesn't see an immediate need for doing this right now. And he can, he certainly wants something in return, for removing these tariffs. That I can understand. But the thing is that he got to understand that this is actually hurting America more than hurting China. He understands that who are actually paying for these tariffs. There's numerous studies out there that have been they're pointing out that it's the American households that are actually paying for these painful tariffs. On average, each household is paying something like $800. So this is actually not good for the U.S. economy. And I hope he understands. I think he does understand that. And also from China's perspective, of course, we like to see these tariffs gone. And American companies operating here in China would like to see these tariffs gone as well.
Brandon, 20 seconds. Biden labeled China as a competitor, and tech is central to that. Your thoughts on the Biden administration's stance on competition in the sector of tech?
They will continue to pursue what they believe to be competitive level playing fields that will at times infuriate China. The difference from the President Trump will be that it will be much more rational, much more predictable, and much more based in fact and actual dialogue rather than caprice and bullying.